Hello, everyone. I'm Sherry with the CGH Health Foundation. Welcome to our program. Today's program is one of our Growing Healthier series. So we cover important health topics, and they're sponsored by the CGH Health Foundation. All of our Growing Healthier programs are presented here live on Facebook at 12 noon, usually on Thursdays. But if you miss one, don't worry about it. We record them and you can see it later on our Facebook page or by going to the CGH website and looking for our YouTube channel. Today, Dr. Bird is going to be talking to Dr. Angel Blasquez, who's one of our family medicine providers in our downtown clinic in Sterling and well known for his expertise in diabetes. And the subject of today's program is diabetes medications. And we're going to talk specifically about those ones that are kind of being marketed to be good for weight loss. Next month, if you want to put it on your calendar, on August 3rd, our guest will be Dr. Altaya, who is a pulmonologist with CGH, and he's going to be talking about lung cancer. And I'll just give you a hint, it's not all about smoking, so that will be a good one to watch for. I want to give you a little bit of information about what's going on with the CGH Health Foundation. As you might know, our campaign focus for last year and this year has been dementia and Alzheimer's. And we have been looking at providing a lot of new services and resources to people who have dementia or to those who are caring for people who have dementia. Our campaign is still accepting donations, and if you would like to contribute to that effort, you can look for more information on the Health Foundation page on the CGH website. One of the services or programs that we did once already this year was a stress busting class for caregivers of people with dementia. And it went over really well. It's a 9-week class, meets once a week, and we have another session starting on August 1st. There are still openings, a few openings left. If you are someone who's caring for someone with dementia or Alzheimer's and you want to learn some good stress busting techniques, that would be a great one. You can register for that program by calling our Dementia Navigator, and that is Beth Sturck, and she can be reached at 815-625-0400. Her extension is 3977. And so now that I've shared all of that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Bird and his interview with Dr. Blasquez.
Thanks, Sherry. Good afternoon, everyone. July 13th. July 13th, 2023. I'm Dr. Bill Bird, Chief Medical Officer here at CGH Medical Center. And today we're going to talk about diabetes and kind of hone in more on diabetes medication management, and also talk how that flows into weight loss in light of some new treatment options for diabetics. So the person that we should probably talk to about that is Dr. Angel Blasquez. So Dr. Blasquez, let's get you on there he is.
Hello.
Hi, Dr. Blasquez. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having me in this program.
Yeah. So Dr. Blasquez, as Sherry pointed out, has had an interest in all things diabetic throughout his career. And so it's good to have him to kind of share some of his expertise with us. So I'm going to start. We're going to get into the medicines and some of the weight loss stuff in just a moment here, but just briefly, let's just make sure we're clear. How would you define diabetes in the first place? And I'm mainly talking about the adult onset type, not the type 1, but just how would you define it?
Yeah. As most people know, there's two types of diabetes. One is mostly on young people, the other one mostly in adults, although they can cross over. But diabetes in adults, it continues to be, since 5 years ago, the definition is fasting blood sugar of 126 or higher. And usually in two different occasions, or a hemoglobin A1C, which is the blood test that tells me what is the average blood sugar, above 6.5. I will go ahead and mention there's something else out there called prediabetes, or increased risk of diabetes. And that is when the blood sugar in the morning is between 100 and 125. Or that hemoglobin A1C being between 5.7 and 6.4. And just to make it quick here, of the people who have prediabetes, they have a 20 times higher risk of ending up being diabetics in 5 to 6 years.
Yeah. Okay. That's quite an increase.
Yes.
So diabetes, what causes it?
So in most adults, the diabetes is a combination of factors. So the two main factors on diabetes are genetics, genetic predisposition to have resistance to the insulin, and the other one is obesity or increased weight. So the weight creates this resistance to the insulin, which is a natural hormone that we have to lower blood sugar. And the body has to produce more insulin just to maintain the same blood sugar. Eventually, the pancreas, which produces the insulin, starts burning out. And when your insulin production goes down, usually to about half of what it should be, by then you become diabetic. You just cannot keep up with the needs to control that blood sugar. That's in a nutshell most of the adult diabetes.
Yeah, thank you. And why is it important to do a good job, if as much as possible, for someone who's diabetic to control their blood sugars?
Diabetes is not just a disease; it's a syndrome. It includes so many things. So diabetes it starts with that insulin resistance, and then your blood sugar goes high. Then you have arterial disease that can affect your kidneys, can affect your eyes and your retinas, can affect your peripheral vascular system to your toes. Um, I mentioned the kidneys, and eventually heart disease, which is one of the most common ones that we see from diabetes. So it's important to control diabetes because the end result of diabetes is affecting all those organs. Just to give you an idea, the toll of diabetes when it comes to the syndrome and all the comorbidity that comes with diabetes in America is in the range of over $260 billion per year. That's a big number.
Yeah, I'm surprised the number's that low.
Yeah,
I know it sounds like a big number, but
so and that is just a direct cost of diabetes when it comes to health. There is another number that is a little bit lower than that is in loss of productivity.
yeah,
And I think that one is 140 billion or something like that.
yeah. So if you're diabetic, what are some just routine screening things you need to make sure you get done?
So on diabetes, the general population past 35 should be checked for fasting blood sugar every 3 years if you don't have any risk factors for diabetes. But when I mention any risk factors, something as little as being overweight puts you into that risk factor. So if you have any risk factors, family history, being overweight, any of those, then you should be checked for your blood sugar once a year. You should check your blood sugar, which is a pretty simple test. Just a fasting blood sugar once per year. We wouldn't be finding so many patients already at this stage of diabetes. As you remember, I mentioned pre-diabetes takes 5 to 6 years to become diabetes. So we should be able to find it there if we do a better job monitoring.
Yeah, good. So let me then go into, before we talk about the medicine part of this, I just want to talk about the pump part of this, because a lot of our, not all, but definitely diabetic patients are on pumps more and more to manage their diabetes. Would you just give us some information about some maybe newer pump technologies that are out there?
Sure. This is a subject that I'm very excited about. We've come a long way on pumps. And nowadays, with the advent of the sensors, now we have pumps that communicate with the sensor. And the systems we have now is called a hybrid closed loop system. And what happens there is the sensor is telling the pump what your blood sugar is doing. The pump analyzes that number of the blood sugar, whether it's going up or down. And then based on those numbers, the pump will decide if it's going to give you more insulin or less insulin. Then you still have to do some basic things in some pumps. Some pumps you have to calibrate. Some newer pumps you don't have to calibrate. And the other one is most of the pumps you have to tell the pump that you ate, how much you ate, so the pump has an idea. But some of the newer pumps that are coming out just as we speak this month actually can read that you ate based on the blood sugar going up. And you don't even have to enter how much you ate because the pump will figure it out. So it's a completely automated system. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close to being completely independent.
Wow.
It's
That's
amazing.
almost, we're getting close to like an artificial pancreas type of
Pretty much.
situation.
This is an artificial external pancreas equivalent.
Yeah.
Mechanical, but it's pretty close to an
Yeah.
artificial pancreas function.
Huh.
So it's pretty
Okay.
impressive. This pump, the latest of this just is running out as we speak this month.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. be interesting to see over the next few years how many folks gravitate to that type of system. I would think quite a few.
Yeah, and we still have the challenges that most insurance companies don't want to go into a pump unless you absolutely need to be on a pump, which
Right.
it's a very expensive technology,
Yeah.
but it's amazing what it can do for you.
Yeah. There'll be insurance obstacles.
Yeah.
Yes.
Such is life.
Yeah. All right. So I want to get into the medicines for diabetes, and it's in our careers. It's interesting how I was just, as I was putting these questions together, I was thinking about how much the medicines that are available for folks who are diabetic, how much those have expanded in the last 25 or 30 years or so. So I'll let you talk a little bit about some of the basic, what are the diabetes medicines available, and kind of give us some more information about them.
Yeah. So a bit of history, diabetes. We used to treat diabetes before my times. It was only insulin available. Then they came with the glyburide glipizide, which are medications that I think they're terrible nowadays by today's standards. And then they started coming up with newer medications. So the thing to remember about the treatment of diabetes is that diabetes is not just lack of insulin. Diabetes is very complicated and includes lack of insulin, includes inappropriate secretion of glucagon, which is a medication that the hormone that makes the blood sugar go up. Even the steroids play a role. There are different hormones that we produce in the stomach and the bowels called GLPs and GLP-1 and GLP-2. And those hormones actually slow down the release of sugar from the liver. They slow down the absorption of sugar in the stomach. They also work in the brain. So we have now medications that target multiple different areas of diabetes treatment. We also have medications that work in a system of the kidneys that lets spill over excess sugar on the blood when the blood sugar goes too high. And that's a hormone that we have. And now we also have those in the form of medications. So many times I tell patients when they come from somebody and they say they go to somebody who gave them a different treatment. So there's so many ways to treat diabetes, but the new standards are trying to streamline the algorithm that we follow treating these patients. So we have most of the medications nowadays do not lower blood sugar below normal. They just bring it down to normal. And there's only 2 classes now that can lower it below normal, which is great because we don't have to worry so much about low blood sugars anymore.
Yeah.
So they are in different classes, so I can mention the classes, but we can spend hours talking about the multiple ways to treat diabetes, which is good. It's expensive, but is very, very good. And we also target the patients whether we want to protect more the kidneys or the heart, whether we want them to lose weight. In some cases, they don't need to lose weight, although it's rare, but in some cases they don't. So the different medications we use are also targeted based on what else do we want to protect. Is this a patient with heart disease? Then we need to go into the injectables that protect heart disease. Is this a patient that is having early stages of kidney disease? Then we use a class that is called SGLT2s that are the ones that make you spill sugar in the urine, and they actually protect the kidneys. So we have all this variety. And nowadays we use them combined. So it's not uncommon for a patient to take 2, 3, or 4 different medications for diabetes.
How often with these new medications do you find that insulin comes into play still?
So let me take this off. I'm sorry about that.
No.
Say again?
How often, with all these new medications, do you find that insulin is still what role does insulin have with these newer medications?
Insulin has come from being, before my times, the number 1 treatment for diabetes to nowadays being almost the last treatment of diabetes. And it's not that it's bad. It's just that we have medications. Insulin lowers blood sugar. So we are treating diabetes as if it's one hormone problem, and it's not. So all these other medications work in different hormones and mechanisms of the body. So now insulin is becoming just one more on the big gamma of treatments we have. So now insulin is coming down to the patients who are going down on the insulin production to a level that we have to give them some insulin to compensate from the lack. And that has come from being probably an 80% of the patients to being now less than 20% of the patients.
Okay.
You know, it's a small group of people who now use a small amount of insulin for baseline, much moderate. And we are, of course, talking about the type 2 patients.
Right. A lot of people probably, who are at least people that are diabetic, have heard of the drug metformin.
Yes.
So and that's been around for quite a long time. It's very inexpensive. It does have a tendency to make you lose some weight. So when do you find yourself deciding that that's a good fit for patients? Would you say?
Metformin has been the base of the treatment for diabetes for many years. You know, metformin was the first medication that targeted insulin resistance instead of just trying to increase the insulin. And the studies on metformin are huge. You know, there are huge studies on metformin for many years, not only here, but all the way around the world, including a huge study in China, not only in diabetes, but pre-diabetics and even normal population, which gave significant results of preventing diabetes in those patients. So in most patients, we start with metformin. You know, if you start very early, metformin might be the only medication that you take. And it actually helps with weight loss a little bit, not too much, but it helps a little bit. So now we do from metformin, we start there and we keep adding medications. And metformin is very good until your kidneys go bad. At that point, metformin is not good anymore because it is not good on kidneys that are affected. It doesn't affect good kidneys, but it's not good on kidneys that have some problems already.
Okay. Yeah, good. Appreciate that. And it seems like when I'm reading about these newer medicines, there's at least one of them you have to be a little bit aware of the patient's kidney function.
Yes. So on like I said, on the metformin, you can use it until you see the kidney function declining, and then it's not good to use anymore. Some of the other medications that we have, like the GLP-1s, which are, the SGLT2s, which are the medications that work on the kidneys. So if you give it to somebody with bad kidneys, it doesn't really harm them. It's just that it doesn't work. You know, if your kidneys are not working well, the medication that works on the kidneys is not going to work.
Okay.
So it's an exercise of futility to give it somebody with kidney disease. So that class is pretty much out on patients with kidney disease. The GLP-1s, which are the injectables, don't have any kidney problems on that. Depending on the kidney function, there's no restrictions for the most part.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you don't have to worry about that.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about, because you mentioned earlier on that, you know, if you can wave a magic wand over a lot of our adult diabetics, that you'd have them lose some weight, and that would be really helpful for their disease. So I want you to talk a little bit about what you're seeing with, number one, these GLP-1, which are the main ones that I'm understanding that are being used for diabetes, and also they are being used for weight loss, and maybe how that plays in also to even like bariatric surgery, which traditionally was, you know, there've been some studies out that have shown that that's pretty helpful for people who are diabetic in terms of their outcomes if they have that surgery. So I'll let you kind of talk a little bit about the interaction with that surgery and that medication and weight loss and diabetes.
So let's start by explaining what GLP-1 medications do on the body. So the GLP-1s is actually a hormone that we have. It is a hormone that is produced by the GI system, the stomach and the bowels. And this hormone is secreted not by a gland, but directly by cells on the GI system. So in our duodenum, you have about 1 in 10 cells have the capacity to produce this hormone. So this hormone is released when you eat. So when you eat, the stomach and the bowels sense that you're eating, and these cells will start secreting these hormones. So this hormone will go to the liver and tell the liver not to release any more sugar because you have sugar coming on. So the liver will not release the sugar at that point. They also work in the stomach by slowing down the absorption. Well, the function of that is to slow down how fast you get the sugar in your body, which is very smart. They also work in the brain, and they tell your brain that you're full, that you should stop eating. And that's where the weight loss comes, because you start eating, and this is the hormone that we have that naturally tells you, I am full now. I don't want to eat anymore. So on patients who don't have diabetes, this hormone works pretty well. On patients who have diabetes, for reasons, very, very complicated reasons, this hormone doesn't seem to work well because there's too much competition from the other hormones. And then the body becomes immune to that hormone. And then people end up eating more. They don't do it on purpose, but they don't feel full. So they end up eating more than what they should. So by discovering and synthesizing this medication, this hormone basically, which actually, by the way, happened even prior to insulin. They discovered this prior to insulin. And there's a paper from the 1920s, I believe it is.
Okay.
And they just didn't know what to do with it. They didn't understand the action of this. So they tabled that paper. And now we discover what to do with it. And they also didn't know the cardiovascular benefits of this. So now by using these medications, when it comes to weight loss, what is happening is that in the brain, it's telling you that you're full with probably half the amount of food that you used to eat. And the end result is that you lose weight. Now, the plan of the medication is to lower the blood sugar. But one of the results of the way that it works is weight loss. So the interesting part on this hormone is that since it's a natural hormone that we have, we can give it to non-diabetics. We all have this hormone. You don't have to be diabetic to use this hormone. Now, of course, on the research, there's only 2 of those that they use on non-diabetic patients. And we can foresee that all of them will most likely be approved that way. But at this point, there's only 2 of those. And we do know that all of them can get you to lose weight. Basically, by feeling you full. You feel full when you eat. That's the basic mechanism by which you end up losing weight. So the public discovered through social media that these medications make you lose weight. And they have figured out the way, not only in America, but all over the world. So they have figured out the way to convince some of us to prescribe this medication. Or in some countries, you can get it without prescription and use it for weight loss. And, it's not necessarily wrong. It's just that it's not indicated for that in the cases of the ones that are not approved. But they do make people lose weight, and that is for sure. And I foresee that most of them will pursue this indication. And whether insurance companies will cover remains to be seen.
Yeah.
Because they're very expensive.
Yeah.
But I will also say the mechanism by which diabetes happens, one of them is by being overweight. That gives you insulin resistance. So the other side of the coin, if you start by losing weight, then your diabetes will get better. So it's a full circle.
Yeah.
If you take these medications and lose weight, you will lose weight with the medications, but your diabetes will get better. But if you lose weight without the medication, and only as little as 5 to 7% weight loss will make a difference on your diabetes. Now, that's not easy to do, but
yeah,
it is proven.
What would you say like the role then is of bariatric surgery these days in terms of all that?
So the bariatric surgery is, in my opinion, the physical equivalent of using these medications. It will achieve the same thing. It will shorten your stomach, make your stomach smaller. And then you will feel full in your brain. And you will stop eating before you eat too much.
Yeah.
And then you will have the same end result. So there is a role for bariatric surgery. It is an aggressive way to get there. I call these medications the chemical bariatric surgery. They do the same thing without having to do the surgery. But in some patients, you get to the point that their life is at stake and they should consider bariatric surgery.
Yeah.
That is a small group of the population, but in some people, they get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can be a life-saving surgery in some people.
You see a question there about the side effects of
Yes.
those medications.
So the number one side effect, the question is, what are the side effects of these medications? And the number one side effect of these medications is precisely a normal action of this medication, which is feeling full. But if you feel too full, now you might get sick and you may have nausea, which is the same effect that we would have if we eat too much. So whether it should be called a side effect on our effect or an effect of overdosing on a hormone that we normally have, but that is the number one side effect. Following that, we get some patients complain of loose stools. That is not very common, but some patients complain of loose stools. But the number one side effect is upset stomach, nausea, and bellyache.
Yeah.
By far. By far.
Well, I guess time will tell too, in terms of any long-term implications of being on a higher dose of a hormone for, because these medicines are not medicines that you just stop if you want to maintain your weight loss, is my understanding.
If you stop this medication, you go back to where you were when it comes on how your brain works. So if you start taking this medication and you're not having a plan to change your ways, to change the way you eat, to change the food you eat, then when you start the medication, your brain is back to the way it used to be. So if you used to eat X amount and you didn't change your ways, you go back to that. So
Yeah.
that is the caveat of these medications.
Yeah.
That the medication alone will make people lose weight.
Yeah.
But if you don't make that part of a bigger program,
yeah,
at the end, you will probably go back to your old ways.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too, because it's still trying to get, I think we're trying to get this figured out, because the number of people that could potentially qualify for these medications, and then the cost of what these medications currently are, if you run those numbers, they're staggering in terms of the getting that everyone who would qualify or would want these medicines. So you and I are not going to figure that out in this conversation, but I thought I would just interject that is definitely something that is people are trying to get that figured out.
And that will bring a social dilemma. Is as I mentioned, the cost of diabetes to the population is over $260 billion on healthcare. But we know that the main reason for diabetes is obesity. And the cost of treating obesity, it might be that much. I don't know. I don't know the numbers on that. But these medications are over $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
And if you're treating 30-40% of the population, what is the cost to society? That is not for us in medicine to determine.
Right.
It's for the social systems and marketing systems to determine whether the return on investment is worth it. It's not for me to guess on that. I don't know.
I have one other question I want to run by you, because I sometimes want to know, once you start these medicines and get a desired A1C, to your decreased dose or change diabetic treatment?
We normally don't do that. If you get to your desired hemoglobin A1C, we want to maintain that. And I can tell you anecdotal here. I have had patients who got to desired A1C, who also got to not to desired weight, but significant weight loss. And suddenly, because of the cost, they stopped the medication. And I can tell you 100% of them went back to where they came from. And then we have to start the medication again. So again, we have the issue of changing the ways. So it is not any different than taking a high blood pressure medication and you achieve your blood pressure control. Well, you don't stop the medication. Now you can reduce the dose and you can come to a dose that hopefully can maintain that. But to go all the way to stop, more often than not, brings you back to the problem that you had to begin with.
Yeah. I want to run another question by you. Maybe it's towards the end of our questions here, but in your career, when you think of the patients that have without this medication, without this new GLP-1 medication, or without bariatric surgery, have been able to take weight off and maintain that weight loss for a number of years thereafter. Are there any common themes, or what have you seen that seems to work for folks?
Well, this is a subjective opinion. But what I have seen here is the people who are really committed. I have had multiple patients through the years that I told them, you're becoming diabetic and you need to change your ways. And there has been a small percentage, but multiple patients who lost all the weight and they come back and they no longer have diabetes. And almost all of them, when I ask them, what did you do? The most common answer that I get, they tell me, I pretty much stopped eating. And that's the answer that I get. So they just made a radical change on the way they look at this. But yes, I've seen that multiple times. And I've seen these patients and, not wanting to take any medications. And we follow the hemoglobin A1C and they can maintain the hemoglobin A1C. Unfortunately, it's a small group of people and they are really determined and committed and motivated to do it. And it's a special group of people who have that commitment and that motivation and that dedication to anything in life.
Yeah.
And those are the ones who have achieved that.
Yeah, it takes a lot of brain space to be able to do that and maintain that, because you have to take energy, literally have to take energy to kind of continue on that course. So, one of the things that I was talking with one of our colleagues, with Dr. Coons, about recently was, the reality of our brains is the food that we are exposed to in the last 100 or 150 years and the lifestyles that we live in the last 100 or 150 years are way different than they were for thousands and thousands of years before that. And so our brains haven't caught up to how to handle really fatty foods, the salty foods, the high sugar foods that we have in abundance at our disposal. So in some ways, it's a wonder that more folks don't have weight issues than they do, I guess you'd almost say, because a lot of the world that we live in pushes against that. And so this is just not an easy situation for folks.
And we have, as a society, have made it so much worse. An example that I use quite often when it comes about diet, and I tell patients that, it's not your fault, it's a social problem. We end up concentrating foods and making things more calorie concentrated with evolution in our system. But one of the examples that I tell people is, in the past, if you were eating an apple or you were eating an orange, you might eat one apple, you might eat two, you might eat one orange, or you might eat two. But if you go to a place and then you order an apple juice and an orange juice, and if you make that at home, it takes 5 or 6 oranges to make a glass of orange juice. I have never seen in my life anybody eating 6 oranges. I have never seen that.
That's a good point, yeah.
But yet you get a glass of orange juice and you chug it down in 30 seconds and you just ate 5 oranges or you just ate 5 apples.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And we do that with everything. We do that with cake and pasta. And those are things that normally we wouldn't be able to compact and eat so quick.
Yeah.
And we figure out the way to do it.
Yeah.
So it's, you're fighting, when you said about willpower and brain cells to do what it takes, you're fighting society, you're fighting our systems. So that's not easy to do.
Right.
You have to go to the restaurant and tell them I only want half the food. And I don't want an orange juice, bring me an orange.
Right.
We're not there.
Right.
So
right. Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? Good conversation. Appreciate your time, Dr. Blasquez. Always good to have you on. And so Dr. Blasquez practices in our downtown clinic, professional building, we call it. And there's our diabetes center is right in that building as well, which Dr. Blasquez oversees. So just want to give you and that team a thank you for all the work that you're doing, and for patients who may have more interest in this. Dr. Blasquez is someone that I would definitely seek out.
And, my take-home message is, well, of course, try to lose weight. I know that that's easier said than done. But also, if I could have one wish on diabetes, it would be to never diagnose diabetes, but always diagnose pre-diabetes. I really think that if we check everybody every year, everybody with the risk factors, every year for blood sugar, we will start finding people on pre-diabetes. And then we can be ahead of the game. And instead of waiting until people come into the office and now the blood sugar is 350 because they haven't seen anybody or they haven't been checked for blood sugar in 5, 6, 7 years. And now we have to do the whole gamma of the treatment.
Yeah.
Versus finding people early. I think by checking everybody, not everybody, but everybody on risk factors is so simple. One little check once a year.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Yeah. Well, great point. I appreciate that. And we'll end on that point. So thank you, Dr. Blasquez.
You're welcome. It's been a
All
pleasure.
right. Yeah.
Thank
you. I want to do our usual thank yous and highlight some of the folks that work here at CGH. So I know Rebecca's going to put so first I want to congratulate Greta Van Wielden, who is our Employee of the Month. And Greta works in our cardiac cath lab, which is a place that it's a busy place. And so Greta really helps to make that place work well. And so congratulations to her. Oh, and a Daisy Award that I want to mention is Elizabeth Reed, who works in maxillofacial surgery, which is Dr. Whitaker's office. And by the way, Dr. Whitaker retires this month, so I just also wanted to thank him for all his good work throughout the years, taking care of patients. Oh, and a Sunshine Award for Desiree Oladi. Desi she works nights, which is a tough gig, but she works nights up in our CCU, in our critical care unit. So want to thank her and congratulate her on winning the Sunshine Award recently. And then retirement, Jane Duffy, our medical technologist, after 23 years of service, is retiring. So congratulations and happy retirement to Jane. Yes. And then finally, we are going to be having Dr. Altea on next month to talk about lung cancer. And we might pick up a few other lung issues that we talk about next month. Dr. Altea recently joined our medical staff and is a pulmonary critical care doctor here at CGH. So anyhow, I've gone longer than usual, but I thought it was a good conversation, and I wanted to make sure we let Dr. Blasquez say what he knew about diabetes and weight loss. So thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to this broadcast, and feel free to share it with those who you think might be interested in as well. Until next month, thank you for watching, and have a good day.